stars all way. Right, we're going to talk about. We're going to say this is the annual members meeting, so let's get slightly back on track. So we're going to talk about the year that's been and look ahead to the time that's in front of us as well. The most common question I get asked, I'm in a very privileged position from the communications team. I get to travel around lots of different places and meet lots of different staff. The most common question I get asked about either of you actually is, what do you do? And so for the benefit of our guests here and for the staff that are in the room, what does a chair do? And what does a CEO do?
Well, obviously, I spend a lot of time commenting on Scott's sartorial elegance. That's a key part of my job. I mean, the chair of the trust is there to basically ensure that a few things happen. That we have a coherent ambition for what CPFT is here to do, and that ambition is focused upon serving the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and a few other little outlying areas that we have. But fundamentally, it's about making sure that we have that ambition in place and the capability and capacity to deliver it. It then, allied to that, the key role of the chair is to make sure that we are operating with accountability and transparency always for what we are doing, and that the tone is set from the board, but in every interaction that we have, it's to make sure that we genuinely operate with a sense of who we are accountable to, which is essentially, although we have lots and lots of places that we report to, our ultimate accountability is the people that we serve. A key role of what the chair does is to also seek assurance. So you will all know that CPFT operates in 55 plus sites. And we do amazing things in all sorts of different ways across both physical health and mental health, which makes the job of getting assurance that everything is consistently good a really important part of what the board does. And as chair, I have to make sure that we're always seeking and pushing for that assurance. And then the final part of the work of chair is, it sounds very grand, but it's slightly ambassadorial. So lots of outward-facing stuff, making sure that the case for CPFT is made and that it's heard, and that where there's opportunities for partnership and for relationships to be built, that we're on the front foot with those. So I hope that's what gives you a bit of a summary of what I as chair have to do, but there's such a rich variety of things that come through the door all the time, Andy.
And Scott, as a CEO, how do you see the role?
I can't think of one word. As Eileen was speaking, I'm trying to think of one word to come up with that would summarise it. I can't. It sounds very arrogant. You just can't come up with one word. But a lot of it is about the flip side of what Eileen was just describing, facilitating a lot of that. We have the responsibility, myself and my executive colleagues, we have that broader responsibility of ensuring that we deliver the services that are expected of us as efficiently and effectively as we can, particularly in the context of those that we serve. We have the formal governance process, so we have to ensure that the assurance that the board needs to be able to demonstrate and discharge is well supported. And there is an ambassadorial element to it as well in terms of engaging with system partners on an active basis across the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough system. Something in mind?
Yeah.
I was going to read something into that. The fact that I just started speaking. And the lightning started. Anyway, where was I going with that?
So the ambassadorial role.
Yeah, ambassadorial.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to get you stuck on this, but
no. Again, we're trying very hard not only to be effective in our own right, but to play a very effective part across the wider system, and that involves a lot of engagement with our colleagues, most of whom, dare I say, in a forum like this, don't actually understand what we do, or the extent to which we could do more to help support them and make their life bottom line.
And we're going to talk about collaboration in a little bit if we could. What have been your priorities for the last year?
So I think everybody who is works within CPFT will recognise that this has been a challenging year in all sorts of ways. We've had significant changes in leadership, we've had financial challenges, and all of that against a backdrop of, it would seem, relentless demand for the services that we offer. And I know, I mean, one of the things I should have spoken about when you said, what does the chair do? Well, I spend a lot of time listening to people who work for the trust and who are colleagues, trying to learn about the range of services that we offer. And the year in review, if I play back what staff tell us, is that it's felt hard. It's not always felt as if we are absolutely confident that we are pushing in the right direction, because we've had so many buffeting winds. But the thing that always comes through, and where I take enormous pride, is that when you talk to staff, they will say that despite all those buffeting winds, they never lose sight of who we serve. And that's what gets us back on course. It's always coming back to the fact that we exist, serve real people, real communities. People do it with immense pride, immense commitment, and it's often difficult. And I know that sometimes there will be a view, and that's why I try and get out and about as much as I can do, that when you're a board member or you have some title, that you don't actually understand what it's like day in, day out, trying to do what, frankly, most of our staff were trained to do. Whether you work in admin, you want to make sure the phones are answered as quickly as possible. You want to make sure that letters get out to people, appointments are made. If you're in a clinical setting, you want to be seeing the people that need to see you. And the frustration that people have about just the sheer levels of demand, the difficulty in recruiting resources, let alone paying for them, just the difficulty in finding people who've got right skills to come in, makes it a tough job. So the year in review is that it's been quite hard, but I'm immensely proud of the fact that we find ourselves now in September 24. So many colleagues participated in the process of recruiting a new chief executive. Not that we want to in any way diminish the fact that we have an excellent Scott beside us, but in 2 weeks' time, Steve will be joining us, and hundreds of staff participated in the process.
I was going to talk to you again about that in a minute, because it was an interesting process. You talked about last year, this time last year, talked of a fierce urgency. I think you called it fierce urgency. You wanted teams to adopt that. A year on, do you think that was possible at all?
So I think staff have worked with a fierce urgency, but I think people get tired with the urgency being the default mode that we are all operating in. And I spend quite a lot of time talking to people in other parts of the NHS, and there's a lot happening in the NHS this week. If we think about it, we've got 2 major public inquiries beginning this we've got the Lampard inquiry, which is essentially on our doorstep, looking at North East London and Essex and mental health services. In the Northwest, we've got the Thirlwell inquiry into the Countess of Chester Hospital and the deaths of the babies there. And today we've had the Darcy report. All of that speaks to, we have a Secretary of State who's on his first day in the job said we've got a broken NHS, and Prime Minister today saying that essentially the NHS felt like it was on life support. So you take all of that together, it is not surprising that our staff feel tired by the urgency of the work, but also what we need to hang on to is the fact the importance of our work makes it just non-negotiable that we've got to do everything we can to make our staff the priority, the way we're organised to do the work, our singular focus, and accept that it will be hard. But part of the case we have to make, and it's what a little bit of the Darcy report talks about today, is that the work we do, whether you want to take a moral stance on it, it is hugely important, and it's been community physical health and mental health have not been either as well funded or as well prioritised as they need to be. So there is a moral imperative to do things around it, but actually the economic case, we're actually saying the NHS at the moment, for every £100 of public money that's spent, the NHS costs us £43. So every other bit of public service has to divvy up the remainder, and it's projected that by the end of this decade it'll be more than £50 from that £100. So we have to make sure that if the money can't keep growing, that actually it's got to go to the places where you can make the difference that actually makes the NHS work, that we can address the bits that are broken. And there are lots of people in this room here who know where it's broken, who know where the disconnections are, and who know that for too long, and you know, I don't win any popularity contests by saying this locally, that decisions have been made historically, which mean that in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we are underfunded by some order of magnitude for the work we do in community physical health and in mental health. And that's just a very inconvenient truth, but we've got to keep saying it. And the Darcy report says investing in these areas is the way to fix the NHS.
We will return to that in a moment. And by the way, if people have got questions, we'll take them at the end. Hold those thoughts. You talked about the change of leadership. So, Scott, how simple was it to answer the call? Presumably it was Eileen that rang.
I've had a conversation with someone else.
But for context, you, for anyone that doesn't know, you came back to the organisation when?
So I came back started officially in February. I'd gone on secondment to the ICB, the Integrated Care Board, to work, as I was suggesting earlier, on a kind of whole system basis around efficiencies. My grand plan had been to retire. The seconded role meant that I was actually spending more time working at home, and again, as I've said earlier, live in Glasgow. I started taking my grandson to school, which started in primary one, so I was doing that every morning. So to come to the core of your question, that was the only sense of hesitation I had, that I would have to recognise or accept I wouldn't be able to take him to school every day. But the call of CPFT, the people, the services, you know, I'd invested the best part of 10 years of my life in the organisation. It didn't take really that long when I got over the emotion of I would still have plenty of time to take my grandson to school.
We do work flexibly.
We do. Thursday afternoons, 3 o'clock, I'm there.
Perhaps only Simon, perhaps in the room, knows how you might feel about being a CEO. And I don't know, when lots of things are thrown at you, when you walk through the door and everybody says, you know, hello, welcome back. And, you know, I think you had a pretty good welcome back, didn't you? I mean, you shake
Incredibly humbling.
where do you start? What have you been able to focus on in the last few months?
Well, I suppose what became apparent, and partly the justification for hopefully coming back and being able to offer some support, was the organisation, as Eileen said, had gone through a very difficult time. We had significant financial challenges that we were facing. We had significant operational challenges and demand on our services that we were facing. And there was an undercurrent, dare I say, of that sense of being overwhelmed, again, that Eileen mentioned, and that then translates into a sense of morale. So being assured that we had the financial issues at least in hand in terms of how we were going to get through the fiscal year, that we had plans that we were developing to manage some of the operational issues. A big part of the role was about just spending time with staff, with colleagues, getting a sense of what was causing them the kind of concern and sense of demotivation or demoralisation that they were expressing, and trying to address some of that, being visible to the extent that I possibly could. So a lot of it was relatively easy, because that's the kind of person I am. I like to talk to people. I'm from the west of Scotland. That's just what we do. So knowing that we had a good team that were addressing some of the other issues, and I could be there to support them, but actually trying to spend as much time as possible with the wider colleagues across the trust, and was the sort of first order of business for me.
I suppose the question to you both really, which is, obviously Eileen's outlined the difficulties that and we're not alone in the issues that we face around demand of staffing and pressure on resources and financial issues. But when you go and see teams individually, how have you found their individual morale, if you like? Question for both of you.
Yeah, it's actually been very heartening to hear from colleagues. You can see a gradual change, a real sense of optimism from a lot of colleagues that you speak to. They still have the self-same issues about, we haven't got adequate car parking, or we could do with further investment in our physical infrastructure, and so forth. But by and large, there is still that sense of conviction and passion, again, described about people's sense of commitment to what we do and the excellence with which we try to do it. But going back to the point about trying to engage and get that sense of insight from colleagues, when you go around and speak to individuals or smaller teams, it does feel a lot more optimistic now.
There are examples of excellence across the organisation. I'm sure you'd agree. Our research colleagues are at the back. Hi, there's Dr. Ben Underwood and Rasha and friends. They're getting a clap. You might as well. By the way, it's a great VR display. I think they put it away because it's probably hugely expensive, but see if they'll get it out before 8 o'clock. Research, groundbreaking research, amazing research, and Ben and the team will tell anyone that wants to talk to them about our brilliance at the research. Sorry to embarrass you, I hope you're not embarrassed, but to use them as an example, there are pockets of excellence across the trust, aren't there? There are outstanding areas. Do you have any thoughts about how that can be mirrored across the entire organisation? That's the mission, isn't it? To be, the mission is out to, who doesn't want to be outstanding?
Scott could speak more to this, but I would say we have more than pockets of excellence at CPFT. We are, it's very easy because we both beat ourselves up and others beat us up, and that's just the nature of working in public service. So what I would say to you, and it was particularly true when we were running the competition for Chief Executive, was that I spend a lot of Thursday mornings with chairs of very similar trusts across England, and many of them they've had churn in chief executives. It's what happens. And so I've heard tales of not being able to get a field, going out 3-4 times to try and get a chief executive, running on interims for a long time. It was really interesting that when we went out to market, we had choice, and we had people wanting to join us because of the strength of our reputation. And it's very easy to lose sight of that. So I think we have more than pockets, and we should acknowledge the work of research that Ben and Rasha do is amazing, and it sets us apart. But we are well known for both innovation and excellence in many, many areas, and we lose sight of that at our peril. And it really, I think that's one of the things that we need to remember to do, is to proactively talk about and celebrate the things that we're good at. We will always hold our hands up and say there are areas where we know we need to improve things, because no organisation is perfect. But let's just take a moment to say our staff are amazing, and I will say amazing things happen in CPFT each and every day. And I don't know them all, but the letters I receive from people who appreciate what we do and who have benefited from what we do and whose lives are improved by what we do are really humbling. And we take that, but we also take the people who say, you could do better, you could have done better for me and my family. And it's getting that balance, but more than pockets, I would say, Andy.
The only bit I would add is, having been in the organisation, as I say, for the best part of 10 years, we've been an incredibly reserved, modest organisation. Even with ourselves, we don't showcase a lot of that really exceptional work that we do. We're trying to change that. We're trying to promote internally as well as externally, much more about what we do and share, as I said earlier, in terms of that ambassadorial aspect of the role. If for no other reason, without sounding patronising, to try and educate some of our colleagues about the excellence of what we do, but also the implications of that excellence on what they do. So we're trying to promote what we do as often as we can, but without becoming arrogant in doing so.
Just upon it briefly, and in fact, we've got some very clear examples in the room of how we work with partner organisations, particularly the Cambridge Children's Hospital. So how important is collaboration and just working with others across the system? And I, I sometimes think, oh, why do we do it? And I can't be alone in thinking that, because collaboration is difficult, I think, sometimes. And I think that I can only bring my own comms experience to it. Sometimes the process gets slowed up by the fact that there's so many different partners involved in different things. So how important is it, and will it remain so?
Incredibly important. And I say that for a number of reasons, not least of which is I started my formative career in the NHS in Scotland, and Scotland works on a single system basis. So it's incredibly frustrating to come down to a system where you have these almost inherent competition traits that come to play. Very often people don't collaborate or don't cooperate to the extent they probably should. What we have now, however, with a model that is not radically dissimilar to that that's in Scotland, albeit we've still got 5 or 6 different organisations within a single system, by definition, an integrated care system needs to work better together. So we're beginning to see a lot more of that. We're trying very hard to advocate for that sense of integration, much more than arguably we might have done in the past. But it is incredibly frustrating still that we have tensions in the system because people cannot help but look out for themselves first and foremost. I'm not trying to overcome that, but it's incredibly important to work together.
So, collaboration, it's what the people we serve expect us to do. And I think if you think about your own experience of health or care, where do the frustrations come from? They come from the bits that don't join up. So I always try to see it through the lens of how does it feel to be on the receiving end of our services? And that's where the imperative to collaborate better comes from. The only thing that I would observe where collaboration is becoming ever more difficult, this is right across the country, is that where you've had ICBs created and they've had a legal duty to ensure that collaboration happens, is that as the money situation has tightened in the NHS, and it has tightened very considerably, that collaboration becomes more and more difficult, that the language of collaboration is spoken, but that actually organisations sort of go back into their own sort of remits, and everything's about protecting my organisation. And I get that. We probably behave in that way ourselves. But where you've got that, and we have to work really closely with the local authorities as well on issues around adults and children. The local authorities, and we think we're in hardship in health. Local authorities are arguably in tougher places. So everybody talks collaboration, but the minute that resources come into play, you do find some behaviours that don't really look like collaboration. And I always come back to how does it feel to be on the receiving end? Services that some people rely on day to day, and there is just no discernible connection between them. I think that's the challenge.
We're very nearly at the end of our conversation. You touched upon this earlier. You talked about the inquiries that are going on. The big announcement, the big speech was made about the NHS this morning. Many of us would have heard the Health Secretary doing the rounds on TV and radio this morning. I suppose we can only hope from our organisations, to be selfish for a moment, that there will be that investment that comes into community organisations. We'll remain hopeful at the moment, Eileen.
Well, without hope, what are we? But we have to make the case for hope. And the place we have to make our case is within the ICB and within the region. The report that was issued today is quite broad brush. It identifies issues, and everybody in this room could probably have written that report in terms of things that you know are that need addressing. The next level now is to get some detail, and some of that detail will come the budget on the 30th, 31st of October. We will get some detail that will give a direction of travel. I want to be optimistic that we're going to see a redirection of funds. I want to be optimistic, but I think it's going to be a tough decade. I think that's been signalled by the Prime Minister today. There's an awful lot of work to do, and if this massive oil tanker that is the NHS is going to get turned around, it's going to have to look different, and it's going to have to spend its money differently. And part of the challenge for us as CPFT is to make sure that we are very clear how we can spend money better, get better outcomes for real people, real places, and to challenge those that we work with to say, come on now, we serve people here, we've got a geography to serve, let's reallocate some of those resources in the right way, but it is going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. There's no point in saying otherwise.
So we're very nearly at the end. You touched on the recruitment of the CEO. For those of you who are guests tonight, and again, thank you very much for coming. It felt very different this time round because there were so many opportunities for ordinary staff like me to get involved and have our say. And why was that so important to you? Because that was very different from the approach that. Regardless of whichever organisation, I don't think I've ever been asked my views about what the CEO, the next CEO should be like. Why was that so important to you? Your fellow,
Well, the reason I wasn't going to do it any other way is that the role of the CEO in health is incredibly important, and it's incredibly important to us at CPFT because we've had some changes. In terms of recent times, in terms of the last two CEOs not having stayed for that long. And actually, what have you got to lose by asking people what they would like from their CEO? Isn't it a respectful thing to do, to say the role of the CEO is so important? We want somebody who is the right fit for us. It doesn't mean that that's somebody who's going to come in and tell us how lovely we are and, stroke our egos, but someone in whom we can see they understand CPFT, they're ambitious for CPFT, and they bring to us a level of experience, integrity, and intellect that will allow us to really move forward. And so I wouldn't have done it any other way. And I was just grateful that so many people, when I wrote that initial note to say, I'd love to hear from you. I got slight repetitive strain injury because my inbox was literally inundated and everybody got a response from me to the suggestions they'd made. We then did the focus groups. We made sure that the decathlon and recruitment activities that candidates went through were focused on making sure that they were engaging and that people had the chance to meet candidates and that their feedback, and there's members of the panel here, their feedback was brought into that final panel discussion and deliberation so that every bit of value that we got was brought into the room at the moment of appointment. And it was fantastic that at the end, everybody's views seemed to collide in terms of a candidate. So I can only say how grateful I am to everybody who participated in that.
Decathlon.
Well, I think if you were a candidate, it probably felt like a decathlon. We never quite added up how many stages candidates had to go through, but it was close to 10. So you had to be really certain you wanted to come to CPFT because it was a rigorous process.
Yeah, I used that metaphor way back at the very start, that it's normally put the advert out, you then get the responses, you shortlist, you put through some kind of screening or psychometric, and then you have the sort of interview process. That was the pentathlon of a conventional appointment. She wanted to double that by getting more people involved. And for what it's worth, I spent a fair bit of time with Steve Grange in anticipation of him starting.
Yeah, we should say who the new CEO is, by the way, if anyone that doesn't know.
His name's Steve Grange. He's a lovely guy. By goodness, did he know he'd been through a process and was grateful for it, because he too learned a great deal about the organisations that I can on the back.
Well, the tall role was a little like okay, so difficult for you because you can't be involved, can you, in the process? But go on then. You never know if he might watch this back. What's your advice for the next CEO?
I would strongly, and I've already stressed this with Steve, that he gets to know the organisation, gets to know the people, because we have some fantastic, we have fantastic people in the organisation. So part of what I'll hopefully be able to help him do over those first few months is actually give him the space to be able to do that. But he's very strongly a people person. So I don't doubt, even without that council, that's what we'd be doing anyway.
I told him to take a holiday before he started, and that's what he's doing at the moment. And then I told him that he needed to have what I call a handshake with the organisation, which means go out, meet people, understand who you're leading. But also, what I do need and what we will get is somebody who is going to advocate for CPFT. Not because any organisation has a God-given right to exist, but because the work we do matters so much. And he gets that. He's done it in other places. He's excited to come. And those of you who've met him will see that there is somebody who cares about people, but who cares about quality and effectiveness of services. And I think he's going to be somebody who wants to come, wants to stay, wants to make a difference, which at the end of the day, I don't think we can ask much more.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. Very quickly, like it's possible. What do you think the next 12 months will bring? Yeah, we'll start with your crystal ball first of all. By the way, when do you leave us?
End of March.
End of March.
So
grandson to school every day.
I'll get the last few weeks of the Scottish term. So for the next 6 months, as I say, trying to make sure that Steve's sense of assimilation and understanding of what we do and the way we do it, the issues, challenges that we face, to be there almost like a conciliary for him in that capacity, but also to give him the space. And beyond that, getting the work-life balance and perhaps doing the golf clubs.
Okay. I was thinking more about the organisation.
When you think March, Andy, it's not that long away.
Okay, so get the handicap down. Okay, right. Eileen, right. Next 12 months.
Gosh, well, there's all sorts of things going to happen in the world in the next 12 months, which we'll all be looking excitedly at. But for us at CPFT, I think there is no easy way to say that the NHS is going to continue to be a critically important institution of the British state. But it's going to be the pressure is going to continue because the demand is not going to just drift away. And we have to be ready for that. The things that we can't know, don't know. The role of ICBs will persist, but we're told that some of their remit's going to change, but we don't know to what. So we're going to have to kind of learn new things, new ways. The people that we work with, our partners in local authorities, their challenges aren't going to go away. So we're probably going to find that we feel stressed and stretched, and we're working with people who feel stressed and stretched. So I'd love to say it's all going to get easier, but I think the mood music is going to be hard. But actually, the optimism, the excellence that exists in CPFT, I think we've got an opportunity in terms of if there is a commitment to fix a broken NHS, then we're part of the solution, not the problem. And I want to play us very much into that solution space. So I'm hopeful that we can do that and do it well.
Thank you very much. If anyone's got a question, please, if you want to ask it now, or I know that Scott and Eileen are going to be around at the end as well, and you're more than welcome to speak to them. Be happy to speak to you. But really, I want to thank them for their time. Hopefully, you think that was a really good insight into where we've been over the last year, the issues that the organisation faces, and what they think of the future will be. I mean, the recruitment of the new chief exec. Please put your hands together for Eileen Milner and Scott Haldane. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. I'll thank you so much. So we want to talk about the Scott and Eileen touched upon it. We're going to start a money, okay? So I'm going to welcome up, please, Chief Finance Officer Lauren Gable. Give her a warm welcome if you want.
Thank you. Hi all, I'm Lauren, as Abby said. I'm a bit disappointed actually, he didn't allow a toilet break because he did tease me right at the start that going between the fireside chat and time for the BBC, I would probably end up providing that opportunity for people. So thank you for those that do stay with us. This is a key part, I guess, of what we do need to cover at this annual members meeting. It's a statutory requirement for us to talk to you about the money. So if you weren't interested, there's a good reason for you to pay some attention. So hopefully you can see slides coming up on sort of smallish screens either side, but there's a really big one over there for those who want to look in more detail. So last year I think it's been referenced as it was a bit of a tricky year for us. I thought I'd cut straight to the chase, or the bottom line as we like to call it in finance. So top right of your slide there you see we had a plan for the year to break even, i.e. to get every penny we possibly could from commissioners and partners for the good of mental health and community services, but to spend all of that money on those services and ideally not a penny more. That was our plan, and that was our statutory aim for the year. What we actually did for the year was we turned what's known as an operating surplus of 2.2 million. There's then after sort of technical adjustments that go through, and our adjusted financial position, so the key number that we're measured upon, was that 0.2 million deficit. So that sounds like potentially we missed it, but actually that does mean we did what we said we would in terms of achieving our break-even position. We actually received £344 million worth of income for our services. So in that context, managing to spend 342 million on the right things and a couple of million on the technical adjustments is pretty good in terms of achieving those aims and making sure that all of the money that we did receive got to where it needed to get to. There's a glimpse on sort of bottom corner of your screen in terms of a bit more of an extract of the accounts, the statement of comprehensive income. Oh, is somebody having a This is pretty good. So I think about this time last year, the lights also went out at the annual members meeting. Maybe we should make it a thing, but hopefully you've got the benefit of some Christmas lights and you can see the slides a bit more clearly. So I was just saying, so the statement of comprehensive income is an extract there for those that are kind of following along in the deck and have got the annual report in paper format or are looking online. Page 141 is where the accounts start, and the statement of comprehensive income is on page 146 if you did want to look in some more detail. Thank you. You can now see. So I guess that's the kind of headline of what we did in numbers, and I've got some more detail to show. Rightly pointed out to me by one of our governors is that doesn't really necessarily tell the story of how the year might have been and felt for many of you, many of our staff. And I guess, really do want to highlight that. So around about this time last year, when I started with the organisation, actually we were £5 million off plan. And so we were in quite a challenging financial position, and we knew that we had a lot to do. Now that meant we went on a journey really in terms of what could we do differently. And there were a lot of things as an organisation we had to decide to do differently. And some of those we were encouraged to do as we moved into what was kind of known as a double lock regime. And that's where our expenditure is signed off by ICB colleagues. So we sort of lose some of our freedoms in that space. Now, that means anything over £50,000 has to have somebody else, our ICB colleagues, approve that we can make that expenditure decision. That sounds like a really high amount of money, but to give you a sense, that's any registered nurse. That's the level that actually the scrutiny was at, which is a really detailed level of scrutiny for an organisation like ours. I really can't thank trust colleagues enough for how they rallied. Endured, I think might be a better phrase than embraced, but worked together as best we could to navigate through that. There were huge changes to processes and structures that had to be set up so that we could make sure this governance flow would happen and to make sure that we make the best decisions we possibly could over those months towards the year end. We did an enormous amount as an organisation, and I think we can recognise that in the change in our financial sustainability. I think sort of picking up Eileen's sort of framing earlier, actually, last year, there was a really good collaborative position in that actually system partners did also support us to enable us to get to that break-even position by the year end. I think we thank them for both recognising the efforts and energies that CPFT made, but also matching that with some financial support to our services in the last year. If I flick on, so this is our income position as was for 23-24. So I've already referenced kind of total incomes around about £344 million mark. I guess the charts sort of slightly higher up the screen in terms of your pie charts is where did the money come from? And we've highlighted kind of the main organisations and bodies that our income comes from. And the one slightly lower down is what was it for? So what's it? The income by source. So on the top one, you'll see Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is the biggest slice on there. So 227 million, 65% of our income come from Cambridgeshire and Peterborough ICB. Now, that's not just because they're the most generous organisation we know. That is because obviously the majority of our services are based within the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough geography. We have got other commissioners within there, but it's just the Norfolk region that you'll see sitting outside of there. But the vast majority of what we do serves this community and therefore is funded by our local integrated care board. We've also got CISO of NHS England income, which is the next most significant bit, 58 million, 17%. And that recognises some of our specialised services and what we do that colleagues might recognise through the East of England Provider Collaborative. If I move down to the bottom element of the screen, you can see kind of the for what purpose we received this income. You'll see that the largest share there, so almost 2/3 of 55% actually, is 197 million for mental health services. So that's just over half. It's the majority of what we do as an organisation. The next big chunk is for community services. So just shy of 110 million there in what we receive for community service income. And there's lots of other elements you'll see in the smaller slices of the pie chart that are available to you there. And I think it's just worth recognising that there are more things that we do than that. So minor injuries units that we've got, obviously 3 units that do great work in terms of giving access to people, sort of emergency access type appointments. So it's a different category of income for us. We do have a significant amount of research and development income that we draw into the organisation. It was recognised earlier, sort of Ben and Rasha and colleagues and the work that they do and the opportunities that can bring both in terms of research, but also for us in terms of clinical practice and what we can strive to achieve there. And there's a very significant green, I guess, quadrant there or segment there that relates to education and training. And we do have a really material offer as an organisation, both in terms of what we draw in for use for our own staff, but also in terms of what we offer slightly beyond our boundaries and to other colleagues and organisations in the region. Our expenditure for the year was, as I say, almost matching the income that we drew in for the year. So no surprise there because we got to that sort of break-even position. I think most colleagues have probably recognised this. Unsurprisingly and thankfully, our biggest asset is our staff, and that's therefore what we spend most of our money on. So 73% of our money goes on our staff. So just shy of £254 million on our staff each year. So hugely valuable to us, but obviously that is where we need to spend most of our money because they're directly delivering services to patients or supporting staff to deliver services to patients. We give the breakdown of the staff there, and hopefully you can see that the colours are coming out a bit funny, but I think they look slightly better on the smaller screens. You can make out there. So in terms of where that I guess sits, it's across different professional staffing groups. I think it was interesting to have a bit of a glimpse at it at this level. Quarter of our staff are registered nurses, midwives and health visiting staff. We spend just over sort of 64 million on that group of staff, just to give you a sense of scale. So these boxes are by size in terms of which of the staff groups we have most of, or most of our money in 23-24. The last element I'd like to highlight the accounts is related to our balance sheet or statement of financial position, which, so those following on paper will see on kind of page 147. And there's a sort of breakout notes on page 173 where you see some of the detail of the movement of property, plant and equipment in note 15. So here I'm kind of focusing on what we do on capital spend, and that's the sort of significant investments we make. So we talked a bit about the revenue position. The other half of that coin is the capital spend and what we do in that space. And these are the longer term, more strategic investments that we make as an organisation. So in last year, we spent just slightly less than we anticipated in total, returning some money for system use. But I guess if I highlight my section, so the top bit that's called framed as sort of excluding leases using the NHS England categorisation that we do, is basically stuff that we buy and we'll continue to own. We plan to spend £5.5 million. We actually spent just over £6.5 million. A lot of that was on estates. So about half of that was on estates, and a lot of the anti-ligature work that we did, the risk reduction work across particularly our inpatient areas that we've done across all of our wards, but with a real focus on Mulberry 2, one of our inpatient units at the Fulbourn site. And the other half of that investment that we made was on IT. So part of which we host for the system. So we host a shared care record system to ensure that, or to develop the ability for different organisations to access the different records so that we actually can see more of the patient journey and improve, I guess, the clinical oversight there, but also our management of risk across system partners and try to bring a more holistic view of what we provide to patients as a system. And the other part was EPMA, which is our electronic prescribing and medical record system. And so that's basically doing prescriptions online rather than through paperwork. And you've got sort of a couple of pictures there of the team rolling that out to one of our sites. That's still rolling out this year, and I think that's a significant investment for us and a big move forward in terms of reducing the risk of using paper prescriptions across our wards areas. It both speeds up people actually getting the drugs that they need, but also ensures there's always a direct link to their medical record, and that actually you can easily read prescriptions because the benefit of type is much better than your famous doctor's handwriting. So I do want to highlight those areas. The other element, I guess, is the leases aspect, and those are the buildings that we rent. And the reason we have an underspend is there's one building we were planning to sign the lease for in March, but actually we'll be signing it in the next couple of months. So just slipped the other side of the year in terms of renewal. The last point, I think we've talked about a little in terms of thematically, and I've talked a fair amount in terms of the recovery aspect, but just in terms of efficiencies last year. So I guess where we were mid-year was we were sort of struggling on the efficiencies, but by the time we got to the end of the year, we'd actually delivered more than we planned on efficiencies. So we actually achieved £7 million worth of savings in terms of our spend last year. The challenge being that with the need to navigate through that, I guess, difficult time, a lot of what we did last year was one-off, what we call as non-recurrent. So what was paired with that was the need for us to also find and identify recurrent or ongoing savings, things that would happen year on year rather than just the choice not to spend this year that might slip into next year. But we did get there, and I think it's not to be underestimated in terms of the effort and energy that all colleagues put in to enable us to get to that position and deliver the break-even position. So again, I think a big thank you to all staff across the trust to enable that to happen. Last point from me, and then happy to answer kind of any questions, is just to pick up the other part, the technical aspect. So our accounts get audited. They need to go through an independent audit process. Our auditors are assets, and they work with us quite closely, quite intensely, as you might imagine, during that period last year. We finalised the accounts through to April, and it's a very short turnaround of 2 months where we have to complete that audit process. I'm pleased to say that we met the national deadlines and had our accounts finished by the end of June, and they were laid before Parliament before the summer recess. Our auditor's view was that our accounts provide a true and fair view of our finances. I think that sounds underwhelming generally to people, but that's about as good as it gets in terms of things that they say. Basically, they will qualify an opinion if they've got concerns or raise issues. That was a drum roll to say they didn't raise it. Actually, that's just so clear. But yeah, just to say that actually, they were, they did fairly rigorous testing, and actually, just in terms of the testing they did this year, the rules have changed slightly. So by way of comparison, it was up threefold in terms of the testing they required. So a lot of effort and energy required from the finance team, but also the audit team in terms of reviewing all of that testing. But coming through that process, they were content they provided a true and fair view of the accounts in terms of the financial performance for the year, and supported that with an unqualified bid. Thank you.
Who's looking for our head?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is it? I never know what to. I've got to say, a full tribute to Lauren and her team. You've probably just took. I'll give you a few seconds. It's not enough to talk about them and their hard work, because I think in times when sometimes we haven't got any money, it's or I should say, sorry, economically challenged times. Your team can sometimes get it. People think that they're the villain, aren't they? Sometimes, so it is tricky, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you pulled the card out earlier, the joke was made immediately in terms of the card. Could your team say yes more often? That's definitely what everybody wants the finance team to say. And unfortunately, they can't always say yes. I think the bit that we often miss is, they do have a multifaceted role in terms of stewardship of the money and helping that we do that for taxpayers in the best way we can. But ultimately, the role is to make sure that we account for it properly. And if there isn't a budget there, unfortunately, they're often on those tough messages. But yeah, I can't say thank you enough to the finance team. Some incredibly long hours and difficult times through that year-end period. I've got the Zenzo in the room at the back that I'll just give a shout out to, is our Associate Director of Financial Accounts that joined in February and then led us through that audit process, supported by Richard Nancy, who's here as well, and back to that team. Lydia is our deputy, who couldn't be here with us tonight, but actually it's a really small finance team, sort of less than 20 people guided us through that process. And I think they all did a brilliant job, as I say, to both report the numbers, but show that they were correct, justify those through the audit process, at the same time as running the double lock process.
Okay, yeah.
I was going to say, it was a final point, I guess I had that query earlier, but I think it is worth noting all the kind of time, energy and effort we put in. What I didn't mention is, because I don't think we've often talked about this, but we did formally exit double lock on the 4th of June. And I guess in terms of where we are now, that's something that I really want to keep our focus on, the preference that we keep control of the decisions that we make.
So we can ask for. Lauren, thank you so much. Trying to get your head around the numbers, it's just always tricky, isn't it? Just enormous numbers, aren't they? But Lauren and her team are always quite willing to talk everybody through it. Right, I know so many people are excited about our guest speaker tonight, so let's not keep you waiting any longer. Please welcome the CEO of BBC Children in Need, Simon Antrobus, everybody. Okay.
I feel like I've been incredibly built up here. So, my name's Simon Antrobus. I'm the Chief Executive of BBC Children in Need. I also live in Cambridgeshire, not far from here, in a place called Oldhurst. So I am lucky enough to, obviously people always ask me about Budsy. And if I'd have known, I'd have brought him along, because he actually sits in my garage. When I tell people that, they don't believe me, but it's true. He's there in the garage. But equally, because I'm in Oldhurst, there's a bear in the garage and there are alligators and lions just across the road, if you don't know that. And I can actually hear the lions roar in the morning. That is true. I'm not making that up. It's absolutely true. So, yeah, I've been in Cambridgeshire. I've worked it out now, Scott. It was 2005 I came to Cambridgeshire, over the border from Northamptonshire. And I love this county. I think it's an amazing county. I grew up in Northamptonshire, so I think that's equally amazing county, but it's a really special place to be. So I'm really grateful to be here, and Scott, to you as well, that your shoes would be very welcome in the BBC. In fact, I'm probably slightly overdressed for the BBC column. I thought I'd better do something as I was coming to an important meeting like this. So I'm feeling very worried now because I've brought some slides here which have got lots of dense information in them, and you just had some numbers which were, I think, very illuminating. Well done. I thought that was a good presentation. That's a way to do numbers, I think, when you're talking about detail and important stuff. So, okay, I prefer light on a little bit, but that's all right. I'll see anybody. Right, so I'm going to talk to you very briefly about a programme called Million and Me, which is very important to me, which I brought to Children in Need in 2017. But just to start off, I mean, you know Children in Need because you'll know the Night of TV and Pudsey, obviously, and all of those things. And it's very fluffy and lovely and a great thing. You know, I pinch myself every day I go into the BBC that I actually work for this amazing charity. But we take our job very, very seriously. It's a big responsibility. We can raise upwards of 50-60 million pounds a year, which we then spend on really important causes in communities. So I just wanted to talk a bit about how we get to that point. So we don't just let that money go out the door. It's a very responsible thing, a bit like your finances here. So we think very carefully about what it is for children and young people that we really need to address in communities today. And when I joined, our focus was on ensuring that children and young people are safe, happy and secure. And I think everybody here could agree with that. It's a really important thing that children are safe, happy and secure. But we all thought as we were looking through this that we wanted to be a bit more ambitious about what we wanted to achieve. So we took it one step further, and now what we talk about is, yeah, we want children and young people to be safe, happy and secure, but equally we want them to thrive and be the best they can be. And I've been talking to some of your colleagues in the room today, and I'm sure you can identify with that particular ambition. And when we think about the importance of helping children and young people thrive and be the best they can be, we equally have to think about, well, what is it for the children and young people that you might support, that we support, that children need? What is it that's stopping them from thriving and being the best they can be? And we've identified 4 key areas, and I'm going to oversimplify it because it's a complex thing, and you'll know that from the work that you do. So there are barriers for the children and young people we support that stop them from thriving. The first one, of course, is poverty. Poverty causes massive challenges for children and young people. The second, which we've been talking about here, is mental health. Third is family challenges, the experiences that they have in their families and the family life. And the fourth is social injustice, so discrimination, prejudice, those kind of things. Stop children from thriving and being the best they can be. So when we're thinking about what are we going to do with the money that we raise, it's so generously donated by the Great British public and our commercial supporters, we think about how do we help children and young people navigate those 4 barriers. And I think it's the same, it'll be the same for you and the work you do with children and young people. There's one important factor that helps children and young people navigate those barriers, and it's the powerful positive relationships that you put alongside them that help them work out how do they believe in themselves and think about what they can do to work through the challenges of poverty, of mental health, of the challenges in their families, or those social injustice. So when I'm talking to you about Million and Me and mental health, it's with that kind of lens on it, that the powerful positive relationships that you put alongside them with children and young people help them navigate those barriers. So in 2017, I personally think I did a bit of an ambitious thing. I went to our Children in Need board, which is made up of 50% BBC colleagues and 50% non-BBC colleagues, and I asked them to spend money in a slightly different way. So we absolutely our fundamental principle is that we will spend money on local causes, community causes, and that's an open programme. Any organisation can apply. We will consider your application, and then we'll, if it passes muster, we'll fund it. At the moment, the challenge we've got is that we can only fund 1 in 8 of the applications that come to us because demand is so high, and we can't raise enough money to meet that increasing demand. But equally, we want to think about how can we be a bit more proactive? How can we be on the front foot? What's the difference we can make if we're going to help children and young people navigate those barriers? So we set aside, in a bold and ambitious way, obviously not 344 million. That would be amazing. If I could have 344 million, goodness knows what I could do with it. But we set aside £10 million to spend on trying to innovate and understand what are the best ways to deliver change for children and young people who are experiencing challenges with their mental health. So I'm going to talk you through some of the things that we did in that space very, very quickly. So Million and Me is what we called it. It's called Million and Me because there are about just under 1 million children and young people that have challenges with their mental health in the UK today. That number is growing. So we use that as a kind of branding for what we're going to do, spending this £10 million. Stopped. You move it on. The lights go out, but oh, is that me? Okay, so just a little bit about how we spent the £10 million. So £10 million worth of funding. And whenever we spend money of this scale, we always take expert advice. So Professor Miranda will put together a kind of proposition of how we might spend that money. We put an advisory group together. We focused on the 8 to 13 emerging mental health issues for children and young people. We wanted to be a bit more preventative. We also want to look at those children and young people who are facing additional challenges in their lives. Very much like my issue, we're very concerned about how you ensure that this is informed by children and young people themselves. And we're also thinking about, well, what can you do in terms of digital solutions that help and support children and young people? And that sort of gets us to a point about where we then take that. So this is some of the things that we thought about when we were looking at the work. So early stage concern. So this is early intervention. What we're trying to get to here is understanding what it is that ensures children and young people get support and are able to articulate their concerns early on in their whether it's anxiety or worry or sadness. How do they articulate that? How do they explain that in a language that then can be responded to by trusted adults, parents, teachers? We wanted to look at both the kind of local options to that. What are the community solutions you can put in place? But equally, as I've said, what do we do about the digital solutions in that space as well? And we were looking at things that could be scaled, trying to understand what might be some of the systemic solutions, and then what could be sustainable change. So how can you deliver a long-term solution, and how do we get children to articulate their feelings and share them? This is just a very big cross-section of some of the things that we funded in this space. And remember, we're thinking here about 8 to 13's early interventions. I'm not going to talk through all of these, but you'll see that Storm Break is an educational digital-based solution that enables children to use physical health and physical activity to help them manage their mental health. The Proud Trust is all about helping and supporting young people in the LGBT community with their mental health. The WOW Foundation is looking at how girls and young women navigate challenges with their mental health. So lots of opportunities. There's one that I really love, which is the Verbal Arts Centre in Northern Ireland, which is all about reading rooms. I don't know whether you've heard of reading rooms, but it's an opportunity for specially curated stories with children to help them think about their mental health, to articulate it, and then work through solutions for it. So all of those organisations were part of the 10 million programme, among others as well. We had some partners. So this is thinking about, for the work that we do, it's about what can we fund and what difference can we make in terms of what we fund, but equally who are we working with to try and deliver some of those solutions. So obviously, BBC Children Need, we'd love to be working with our colleagues at the BBC, and they helped with obviously BBC Education and resources. Immediate Media is First News, the children's paper, and that was all about a campaign around mental health. The Centre for Mental Health is our learning and evaluation partner for everything we do in this space, learning and evaluation, research and insights really important. Queen's University Centre, all about rights-based elements of mental health, and Anna Freud in terms of building resources for other organisations. So a comprehensive programme. I'll tell you very briefly about the learning, and again, I don't think you'll be surprised by this, but I think it's sometimes there is work to be done to help others to really understand the importance of trusted relationships, positive relationships. I know my kind of positive relationships in my formative years, a long time ago, have led me to where I am today. So I think it's really important that we emphasise again how important trusted relationships, positive relationships with a trusted adult are. And I don't know whether you know, but in the last decade, 900 youth facilities have been closed in the UK. And that's a kind of foundational area of support when people, children and young people are experiencing early challenges with their mental health, that those universal provisions are not in place. And that's about the safe environments, whether that is a youth facility or a community mental health project. Having a safe environment to go to early on is really important. The importance of digital support in this space, actually for a number of children and young people, being able to access support at the time that suits them in a digital way is really important. We funded a project called Mental Health Innovations, which is known as Shout. You might know that. It's also known as the Crisis Text Line, and it's an important part of delivering 24-hour support to children and young people. And then, of course, the other thing that we found really important is that you don't have a one-size-fits-all. You'll know that with the work you do with mental health, and that recognising and supporting children and young people with their additional challenges is equally important. That was put together by the Centre for Mental Health, who are our research and learning partner. And I'm not going to go into great detail with all of these, but just to give you a sense of some of the recommendations that came out of that, which I'm sure you're kind of thinking about these things when you deliver mental health services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So I've got to get a bit closer because I can't read this myself. So thinking about voice, I've already mentioned that. That's so important. I think even at the age of 8, 9, helping children understand how they can articulate what they feel is the most appropriate way of dealing with their challenge is really important. I've talked about the digital solutions. I think that the really important thing, which I'm sure we're getting to, but with the challenges that we've heard today about the NHS, is that there's a big responsibility for government to see how they deal with this issue in a collective way. I think if we're talking about funders and commissioners, that might be an element that you might think about, but certainly we think about, we're only a small funder in the big cog here, in the big wheel. It is this kind of multifaceted, systematic approach to dealing with and preventing mental health problems. I think this is a really important element about longer term investment. So what we really find this incredibly challenging, because obviously as children need, any project we fund, community project, we fund initially for 3 years. We find that when it comes to mental health, that a lot of the projects that we fund, we're getting up to a decade of support to them. So it's so important that you have that long-term commitment to supporting them. I think there's also a continued story to be telling about communicating and telling the story of the experiences that children and young people face when they're challenged by their their mental health, and that's really important. And as I say, the most important thing that we draw from this at Children in Need, and we're going to do a big piece of work on this going forward, is the powerful positive relationships in a child's life really do make a difference. And it is, I don't want to say it's as simple as that, but that's part of the process. That part is not rocket science. The actual interaction with a trusted adult or another young person is complex and nuanced and you know, challenging on occasions, but putting positive relationships in a child's life when they probably don't have them is fundamental. Very quickly on the kind of this, we talk a lot. I don't know whether you talk about it. Sometimes I think when you work for the BBC, you can end up being in a bit of a bubble, particularly you know when things get really challenging. But we talk about scaffolding. How do you build scaffolding around a child? I mean, you can do this for poverty as well as family challenges, but it's about what support and resources you put in for parents, what support and resources you put in for trusted adults, for communities and for systems, and thinking about it in that holistic way. So when you're trying to deliver services that focus on a child's progression around the challenge around their mental health, it's not one of those, it's all of those, and that builds a scaffolding for that child. What we're trying to do now, because as I say at the very beginning, the big thing for us is that we take this really seriously. Yes, we like to put on the night TV, we've got Budsy, but actually we've got a team of people that think seriously about what's the difference we can genuinely make for children and young people. And there are three things to talk about here. One is scale up. So how do we get more of this out there? How do we fund more of it? How do we encourage our other trusts and foundations to fund this kind of work? Scale out. So how do we build on the community projects that we've done? How do we get those stories out there? And then scale deep. It's about taking that even further. So it is about the conversations we might have with government and other trusts and foundations in terms of the difference you can make in all of that. And that's sort of in our DNA. We are a big storytelling organisation. That's part of what the BBC does, part of what Children in Need is all about. But it's, I guess, saying that, yes, we put £10 million into this, a vast proportion of what we fund about 1,500 projects every year, something to the tune of £45 million of those projects is spent on helping and supporting children and young people with their mental health. On top of that, 10 million. So it's a big commitment for us. So we want to make sure that we continue to talk about it. And then just very quickly on what we want to achieve. So, and I'm not going to go into all of this, just to remind me to tell you there's really three important things which I've sort of talked about. One is about communicating. So, as I say, storytelling really important to us. So you may have seen it. Apparently, it was seen by it was seen by 75% of the public. But this is a big test, isn't it? Because you might have never seen this. We did something called the Heaviest Backpack in May, which was a BBC-wide campaign, and with McDonald's and with other corporate partners, which essentially tried to tell the story of the weight that some children carry on around in terms of the challenges of their life. That was represented in the Heaviest Backpack, and it got a lot of recognition. We put a huge amount of resources behind it. Incredibly, almost crushed our website in terms of the number of people that came through, mostly parents, for support and resources to help their children and young people. And that's really important to us. So continuing to communicate. The second part is about enable. So we think long and hard about all of those organisations that we fund, all the 1,500. How do we provide them with some additional help and resources to enable them to deliver good outcomes for the children and young people they support? And the other part is funds. So we, as I said right at the very beginning, one of the four key barriers to children and young people thriving and being the best they can be is mental health. So we will continue to fund in that activity, and we're looking to learn more and be curious about, well, what is it that can really make a difference to a child's life in terms of their mental health. So that gives you a bit of a, we're at the end of it there. Just to say as well that people sometimes say to me, hasn't happened tonight, which is a good thing. They say, so Simon, what do you do for the rest of the year after November think it's November the 15th this year. What do you do for the rest of the year? And I can tell you that it's a full-on job being part of Children in Need. We have 60 members of staff across the UK who spend a large amount of their time thinking very carefully about the organisations that we fund and support. There are our grant makers, and then another 60 who think about how do you raise money. And tomorrow is the launch of this year's Children in Need. So we have what we call 2 peaks in the year. We have our May peak, and that's when we talk about things like the heaviest backpack. That's not a fundraising opportunity. That's about raising awareness and telling stories and delivering a message about our impact. And then we have the second peak, which is our November campaign, which you will all, I hope, know. Not many people that don't know about Children in Need, but that starts tomorrow. So what tends to happen in Children in Need is that we spend a lot of the year thinking about, well, what are we going to do for the 12 weeks of our campaign? And it's all fun, you know, it's really joyful. And it comes to September the 1st, it's a bit like going back to school. You can feel the anxiety raising in the organisation. I'm hoping you might make a donation off of this, because we close our books. You close your books at the end of March. Yeah, we close our books at the end of June. This year we raised, in very tough circumstances, £48 million. But on the 1st of July, there's 0 as a starting point. And we've got until the next June to try and raise the same amount again. So the 12 weeks from, I think it's actually less than 12 weeks now, from now through to November the 15th, is our opportunity to start to raise another £48 million in 12 weeks. When you say that, it sounds a bit scary. Actually, some of it does come in after the 15th. But we launch tomorrow in true BBC fashion. We've got about 6 launches, so we don't just do one. I'm going to stop it next. I've got something right. We launch tomorrow. Then on Monday we're on the One Show, because we've got a fantastic group of young people who are going to do some incredible challenges over the next 6-8 weeks. We've got another launch of Radio 2 on the 23rd. I can't reveal that, but that is really exciting, what we're going to be doing with Radio 2 this year. And then the following week, we announce our hosts for this year's Night of TV. So it's on the 15th of November. So thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you too for all the brilliant work you do. It's so nice to come to a place where you hear about and to conduct a meeting. I thought I was coming to quite a dry meeting, but actually you brought it to life. You need a job as a warm-up person for the Night of TV.
I was going to get the Children Need gig, right? I've been reduced to being the warm-up. Thanks for burning K. Let's spoil it. It's Harry Styles. It's Harry Styles. He's going to do something. It's Taylor Swift. It's Taylor Swift. Let's spoil it now. No. Simon Antrobus, how good was Simon? I know if he would. The mayor has a full gift for me. There we go. A bottle of Chateau Peterborough, left over from last year's Staff Awards. I suppose I've just got a very quick couple of questions. That's absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Because we talked about big numbers before, and you big numbers, but also it's that you've spent a career, haven't you? You spent a lifetime in working with young people. I think you chaired an inquiry as well, didn't you, into gangs and violence involving young people as well?
Yeah.
Is it, and we've got some children's poets over here as well, and others in the room. Is it, as someone who's so deeply committed to working with young people and trying to give them the best start in life, is it getting tougher for young people out there, do you think, in your opinion?
Gosh. Look, I think the reality, just gone on. The reality is, it is tough for children, young people, but they have to experience the challenges I talked about: poverty, mental health, family challenges, social injustice. And I think the thing that we try to do at Children in Need, which I've always tried to do in my career, working with children and young people, is that we try to believe in them. We try to show them that we care about them and that we can imagine them doing brilliant and great things and being the best version of themselves. And despite it being tough, and I don't think we can get away from that, you know, I think back to my childhood and what children and young people are experiencing today, level of uncertainty, real challenge in terms of social media and expectations on them and with their peers, that it's a tough time for them. But I think what's so good is when you meet some young people. Can I tell you one story? Of course. One quick story. Children in Need funded a project called Chiva in Cardiff, and it was a project to fund and support children who live with HIV, and they can get their medical support brilliantly. There's a lot of medication that helps and support children and young people with HIV today, and their life expectancy is normal and it's brilliant. But there's so much stigma still attached to it. And I met these young people whose only source of social support, because they can't go and stay overnight with a friend because of the medication they take. They can't explain that medication. Sometimes they don't even know why they're taking that medication until they're teenagers. So us funding this activity where they can go and get some support with other children and young people who are experiencing the same is really important, but their lives are really challenging. But incredibly, I met a young woman, she won't mind me telling you this, because she's an activist in this space, called Mercy, who at the time, probably 16, and she said to me, I'm going to come and work for you. And she is now, you know, so she had all these challenges in her life. She had real determination. We gave an opportunity to believe in her. She's now a project director, I think about 25, working for Children in Need on a massive, another £10 million programme we've got, helping and supporting young black people to be the best version of themselves in their local communities. And I think that's the thing that motivates me and gets me out of bed in the morning, that if you can believe in children and young people and give them an opportunity, they will respond.
Here. Thanks again. I think she's Orlando. She's in the jacket there, so because I think you've worked with that particular project as well, so you can share some notes. And Amanda was nodding away because I know that she's worked with children and young people with HIV as well. So it's a small world, isn't it? There you go, Lee. Once again, Simon Antrobus, everybody. Thanks again. We are very nearly there. Just a few minutes to go. I'm going to invite Eileen to just close the meeting and give you a final.
Well, thank you, everybody. I know we've had thunder, lightning. We do have light, though, which is better than last year. So we're counting our blessings. As Simon was talking about children in need, I was getting an awful flashback. In fact, I might need some psychological therapy before I finish the evening, because some of you will know I used to be on the board of the Department for Education, the Children's Department in government. So children in need was something that we always made a big deal of. That's great. But there was a tradition. There were a few good things that came out of COVID, but one of those was that we weren't able to follow this particular tradition for at least a couple of the years I worked in the DFE. But I did, in my first year, have to conform to it. One of our fundraising things was, let's embarrass the ministers, let's embarrass the board. So we had to dance together in our atrium, publicly, seeing the civil servant and minister. I cannot hear the theme tune to Beauty and the Beast without reliving a moment of sheer hell, of being semi-waltzed around very publicly by a minister who shall remain nameless, but who has probably got even more left feet than I do. So we did our bit, though, for Children in Need, and we were proud to raise a lot of money, and it is a fantastic work you do. And Simon, I know you upended your diary to be with us tonight, so I am very grateful to you. And we'll be sharing you know, some of what you've talked about more widely with colleagues who couldn't turn out this evening to hear from you. So you will go to a wider audience, I promise you. Thank you so much. But thank you again to everybody who's come this evening. To Andy, wherever he is, huge thanks, Andy. He deserves a round of applause. Andy's one of the people who does amazing things every day, and we don't always notice them. So, Andy, thank you for being amazing this evening. Thank you. Bit too embarrassing because he loves doing it to other people. To Sarah and to Caroline and Natalie, who all helped to make this happen. They do amazing things every day, and we want to thank them as well. But most of all, thank you to all of you for what you've done, whatever has brought you here, whatever your interest in CPFT is, we thank you for it. To staff, thank you again for the amazing things that you do. And tell a friend that coming to the annual members meeting is not as dry as dust. So when we do it next year, we will have lights, we will have sunshine, and hopefully we'll have lots of amazing things to reflect on in the year gone by. So thank you very much. Don't forget the stalls are still here. Safe travels home though when you do leave. And lovely, lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.